Ko te mea tuatahi, he mihi nui ki te mana i te whenua, ngā marae, ngā hapu, ngā iwi, me te tini o te aroa. Tēnā koutou, ki te tini mate, e rere atu ki Hiwaiki Nui, Hiwaiki Ro, Hiwaiki Paumamau, ka tangiti ngā kau kia koutou. Moi mai rā e te moinga rua. Kia koutou, te hunga ora, ngā pau o te kaupapa rangatira nei, he mi mahana kia koutou katoa. Ko Tania Pouwhare a hau no ngai tūhoi, ko au te kaiwhakahaere matua, kai te kaunihira o Tāmaki Makaurau. So kia ora everyone, I'm really aware that we are heading into late Friday afternoon after a big kaupapa over the last 3 days. So I'm going to try and kind of download as much as I can in the shortest amount of time. But apart from being a lover of Kaimoana, but hailing from a landlocked tribe, I've also got the privilege of leading the Southern Initiative team at the Auckland Council, and our job is the business of radical social and economic transformation. Our work is premised on the late, great Professor Manuka Henare's work on the economy of mana, and you'll see how we attempt to translate that in meaningful and tangible ways in our mahi. Hopefully today I can share with you information about engaging Māori Pakihi or Māori suppliers throughout the whole of the project cycle of housing construction. And it's all based on my experience of working on procurements for construction and infrastructure, which have ranged from 40,000 to 400 million. But my job is to do that in a way that creates social and economic value above and beyond the thing that we're buying. Now, there's a huge difference between a $40,000 contract and a 400 million one, but there are universal lessons that apply around engaging Māori suppliers, regardless of value or even complexity. Hopefully. No. I'm supposed to be pressing the green button? Yeah. Okay, I'll keep going. Hopefully, I don't... Okay, so there seems to be some technical difficulties there. So when you think about procurement, it's just the name of a process that we use to buy goods, services and works. But I always talk about this as it's not about transaction, it's the way in which we decide to acquire those things and with whom. That's where the big strategic value is. And I always think of it as a platform, but the platform isn't a piece of technology, it's not an app, it's not a widget. Rather it's a model and approach that facilitates exchanges and it distributes the ability to solve challenges. It creates impact by enabling something else. Procurement is not an end in itself, it's just a tool. But like any tool, it's only ever as good as its user. So whenever I was involved in a procurement and I'm sitting down with a colleague who's the project manager or the engineer or whoever, my job is to think about the maximum economic, social, environmental, cultural and ethical effects that could be achieved in the spending of this money. And I would always be thinking, how can this project contribute to TSI's mission of an economy of mana? And I never start by diving straight into the mechanics or the obvious things like contracting, that comes later, but first comes critical and strategic thinking. The thing I always think about is, how do I get more money into the Māori economy and then keep it circulating before it leaks out? So that's local multiplier effect. How do I get money directly in the back pockets of those who need it most? Because there is no better economic development than money straight in the back pockets of our poorest whānau. How can I create advantage for those farthest from power and influence and resources? Because that's system change and that's democratising power. How can I influence new markets to emerge and then create first mover advantage for Māori? Because that's pioneering and innovation. So ensuring Māori businesses are in the supply chain is always part of that thinking, and for good reason. So privately owned Māori SMEs are the backbone of the Māori economy. In Tāmaki, they own 89% of the $12 billion asset base, and they're 6% of all businesses in Tāmaki, but they employ 14% of all Māori. And Māori who own their own businesses and then employ others have income parity with Pākehā employers, and it is the only time that you see income parity. It doesn't happen in employment. And our ecosystem of Pākehā is also fragile, and it needs to be cared for. So after the GFC, it took twice as long for Māori businesses to recover than non-Māori businesses. And then when they did, they came back with 11% fewer staff. So imagine if actually we had bounced back fully, it would be more than 14% Māori employees. So we've always got to be vigilant about the economic shocks and building our reserves of fat for lean times, building up our stocks, and then ensuring equitable flows. So by ensuring that we can get as many dollars into the Māori economy and make them sticky, then that is one of the ways we insulate ourselves. So I'm assuming no PowerPoint? Okay. And there's ample opportunities for engaging Māori throughout the whole of the project life cycle, right? So I call that nose to tail. So you've got your business plan, then you've got your design, then you've got your build, then you might have maintenance and operation, and then what happens at the end of those products' end of life? What do you do with them then? And there's anything that you can do anything in procurement, and we've done all this. So, for example, requiring a certain proportion of wahine. This is a male-dominated industry, and it would benefit from more wahine being in there. Living wage. There is no mana in the minimum wage. Supply chain scrutiny, because what we don't want is to end up with parts of our awesome new solar system or whatever it might be that have been made by Uyghur in Chinese detention camps. And this is what you use procurement to do. So in the business plan stage, most people would, obviously think that you engage Māori suppliers in the build, because we've got a lot of businesses on the tools. They make up well over a third of all the businesses that are part of Amotai. But there are opportunities at every single stage to be engaging Māori suppliers. So in the business stage, you've got all those professional services, legal, finance, you've got people who are knitters and weavers and bringing it all together. And I'd like to prompt this thought. In your business planning stage, that you might be thinking 3 markets ahead. So when I'm in concept or business plan stages, I'm thinking, if we deconstructed those buildings, how could I create a market that's not just about the materials, but selling the IP as well? If we wanted this new carbon hoarding material, am I prepared to pay more to enable an industry and to enable a Māori business to get first mover advantage in that industry, because someone's got to blink first. And so these are the types of ideas that you need to bake in your business plan. It's really hard to bring audacious stuff to the table when you're already about to go out to market for tender. And in the design, and my slides would have shown again, ample professional services. And in addition to, engaging Māori businesses, also engaging Māori tauira and providing paid work experience for them. And there's any number of things. There's architecture, the landscape architecture, interior design, artists, experts in biodiversity, structural engineers, water and energy engineers as well. It's a pretty big list in there. But I'd really like to emphasise universal design. And tangata whaikaha, or disabled whānau, are the most marginalised and excluded in our hapore and sadly in our whānaus as well. And there's a photo in the slide of my iramutu, Wiremu and Kadre. And Kadre, my niece, has physical and intellectual disabilities as a result of a brain trauma when she was a child. And as she started to grow up, she wanted to shower herself, which is a really reasonable thing to want to do. And ACC offered her a chair to use in the shower, and she said, nah, no one else in this house has to sit down to have a shower. And the handrail that she wanted meant that they would have to pull out the shower, reinforce the wall in order to be able to screw the handrail in, and so it was weight-bearing. So obviously hugely more expensive than a plastic chair. Now, it would have cost dollars to do that at the outset, at the build, in anticipation that someone with a disability or getting older would need a handrail. So not $1,000, but $5,000. So this is where universal design consultants really come into their own. And one of the things that I'm most proud of supporting is Te Rōpū Waiora, to train tangata whaikaha to become universal design consultants. So they got trained up, and now their clients include Marae, Council, Auckland Transport, etc. And they do audits and they advise on accessibility of physical spaces. And they are now part of the professional services, earning professional services money. I haven't seen the whānau from Te Rōpū Waiora for ages because we were in lockdown for so long in Tāmaki. But when I finally saw them at one of our amotai events, the change in their āhua was a transformation like I have never seen before. And this comes from just making sure that mana motu hake and having higher aspirations and then sticking to your guns is what makes this happen. Their lived experience of disability is their superpower now. Because most of our disabled whānau, they get very little opportunities, if any. And it's almost always sheltered workshops, which is an insult to our whānau whose impairment might be mobility, not intellectual. And we've got this is the mana enhancing economy that I want for all of our kids, and especially ones like my niece Kadre, which hopefully I can show you. That's her there. I want her to be able to have a choice to be a universal design consultant, not working in a sheltered workshop. And, we're a rapidly ageing population. We're going to have to deal with this kind of stuff. Just like climate change, it's not on our back door, it's in our house. We're going to need designers who can mitigate that, like, for example, a sponge city architecture. Where are the next markets that you could be using as a vehicle in this project to ignite these types of opportunities for our whānau? And the build stage is really obvious. And vertical construction is great because it's got so many allied trades in there as well. There's civils like earthworks and services, etc., but vertical is great. So depending on the size of a development, or if you have partnered with a government agency, or it might even be something in your constitutions, you may want to, or you may have to, go down a formal procurement route, almost certainly if there is government money involved in this. So, but to be really clear, you don't have to do the run-of-the-mill conventional procurement. That's not a rule, and you probably won't be told that. You can absolutely use your imagination. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to have the highest standards of probity. That's a procurement bottom line. But sticking to conventional procurement methods where you've got a really old school tender and it goes up on gets, you're just not going to get innovation out of that and breakthroughs. And we've seen that happen time and time and time again. So I just wanted to, this is my mate Heath Nelson. He's the guy in the red tie, second to the end. Heath is the best in the business at this thing. He has got, in 8 years, $2 billion worth of contracts into Aboriginal businesses. He has done as much business as the entire federal government of Australia. And to me, he is the standard that we need to be reaching for. So this is him with the Aboriginal-owned company Wulumara in 2019. So, but only 7 years before, they were a startup. But what Heath did is that he made the new contractor, which is a multinational company, he made them joint venture with these guys. 8 years later, the multinational is pulling out of that market altogether, but they've already handed over all of the capability and the know-how. So this is them on the day they were awarded a $46 million contract. Now, the thing is that Heath, when he did that years before, this is the moment that he had been planning for. And that's what smart procurement looks like, and that's the reward for audacity, ambition, and clever thinking. There's opportunities in maintenance. You know, maintenance contracts, they tend to be long. So when I ask our businesses, what would you like, a one-off with more fat or a maintenance contract over 5 years with less fat? Almost always they say maintenance because they can plan for that. They can plan growth. It's something that they can take to the bank. So this is our matua Tom Major. He was an original Amutai business. He was a Sparky, and he was an original Māori trades training apprentice. He was passionate. His business was HVAC, and he was passionate about warm, dry, safe homes for our whānau, and absolutely passionate about solar. And he's a really good example about what, you know, this is not just about you as the client. What are you trying to achieve here? Matua Tom, he didn't want to grow more. He had an awesome, robust, stable business. All of his kids owned their own home. He had achieved what he had achieved. What he wanted was succession and legacy. So he was taking equity out of his business to provide deposits for his staff to buy their first home. That's the economy of mana. Now, unfortunately, illness took him before he could complete his mission. But there are more matuas out there. And, you know, them as kaumatua and pukinga for the ones coming up, man, would be on fire. And, you know, what other things might we be doing? You know, even No Maira. If No Maira, the kaupapa Māori energy retailer, if they are in your area, whānau, sign up, honestly. My power bill has dropped, and I'm supporting a kaupapa that I'm incredibly proud of. Finally, and this is my last one, everything has an end of life, right? I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about products. So every year, Auckland sends 1.6 million tonnes of waste to landfill, which is enough to cover Eden Park by 1.5 Sky Towers. That waste emits 367,000 tonnes of CO2, and we have to spend millions of dollars looking after old landfills to make sure they don't catch on fire or leach into the area. And construction waste is half of all of that waste to landfill. But it's not waste, it's wasted resources. And we've sent more kauri to landfill than will ever die in the Waitakere Ranges. Our problem stems from it's too cheap to send rubbish to landfill, and all we're doing is socialising the costs for future generations to have to deal with. So like universal design, designing in circularity from the outset. So things can be repaired. If you can't repair it, then how are you able to deconstruct in the easiest way possible? And then it can be reused or remanufactured. Recycling should be the absolutely last option because it's so energy intensive and there's not a lot of things you can recycle anyway. Okay. And this is my mates from Trowel Group. I mean, this was my $40,000 procurement that I worked on, right? No one wanted to do it. So I said to Sire and Joe, look, I reckon you fellas, you need to do this. This is going to be a market, I'm telling you. So they did. They hired a hire race truck, got 2 guys from Wins, and their first contract was $40,000. Now they're a multi-million-dollar market, and they dominate it. They got in their first mover advantage. So this is the type of thing we should be aiming for. Look, just check out Amotai. 1,500 businesses, 200 buyers, corporates and governments, right? And our job is to make those relations and to do that platform thinking. So check them out. I've also, at the end of these slides, just got some other insights, but I'm not going through there, but it's available for you. Really finally, health and safety. If something's going to bring your project down, it will be health and safety. So you are as much of the health and safety importance as the contractor. And it's engaged workforces are safe workforces. Also, look out for fish hooks. You can go bust in the fine print if you don't understand it and someone hasn't advised you properly. That's why if you're doing a project that involves procurement, you're a client, you make sure that the suppliers are given the best advice. People can go bust, and I've seen it. So this is not a tool to be handled by, people who with less experience. But nō reira, e te whānau, our experiences, it's about 10 years worth squeezed into 20 minutes. So, and please contact Amotai if you would like any help or support. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.